Okay, everybody. All right, we'll get right to it so that by, 10 of or a quarter of, we can start taking comments, which are more important than anything else. So we are on the, is it the 15th? Oh, 16th, the 16th Mishna of the first parak of the first chapter. And we now have, it's a little bit different. Up until now, you'd say, this person used to say, this person received the tradition from that person, and he used to say. But now we're actually getting into the family of Hillel. This is the grandson of Hillel, whose name is Rabban Gamliel. Rabban is like rabbi, but it's like kind of like a superlative name. He was the grandson of Hillel, and in fact, toward the end of the destruction of the Second Temple, it was the family of Hillel who presided over. They were the Nasi, they were the head of the rabbinical court, and so this grandson of Rabbi Hillel, Rabban Gamliel, who Omer, Asela Harav. Okay, make for yourself a teacher. Now that's strange because it said that already. If you guys remember earlier in this chapter, we had Asela Harav uknei lecha chaver. Make for yourself a rabbi and acquire for yourself a friend. So not only is it strange that he repeats it, but it's also strange that when it was redacted by Judah the Prince later on, that when it was edited, it was kept in. So he says it again, which seems superfluous and kind of odd. So Asela Harav, get yourself a teacher. V'histalek min hasfek, and remove yourself from doubt. Or how do they pronounce it? Say it. Avoid doubt. Histalek min hasafek, and avoid doubt. But it's not really avoid. It's like remove yourself from doubt. The altarbe laaser umadut, and do not make a habit of giving tithes by guessing. Okay, this sounds a little bit esoteric, but we're going to discover that, like everything in Pirkei Avot, it's incredibly relevant. Provide for yourself a teacher and free yourself. That's a much better translation. Free yourself from doubt, and don't make it a practice to give tithes by guessing. So the first thing that I want to talk about, we're gonna put the first two of the 3 points together, and we're going to talk about something very deep that we all experience, and that is that many times in our lives we could handle. Sometimes we feel, look, I can handle anything if I know what I need to do, or if I know what to expect. I'll handle it. I'll deal with it. But it's the not knowing, and it's the not necessarily knowing what's right or what's wrong. We don't live in a world where right is golden and shiny and beautiful, and wrong is ugly and menacing and scary. We don't live in a Disney-like world where there's black and white, or good and evil, and choice by definition is complicated. That we don't, when we're making free will choices, we don't make them from a place of good and bad. We're not choosing from the obvious good to the obvious bad. Everything in our world is an admixture. It's a mixture of, it looks good, it's not so good. It looks bad, it's not so bad. In fact, we know, we've talked about this so many times, that even the nature of making good choices, we've talked about this so many times in the past, but it's worth repeating because it's so fundamental. It's so basic to living a good life, which is that the nature of good choices is that you don't necessarily want to do them initially. They are harder initially, but afterwards they feel better. I mean, to use just the I mean, I was just reading an article about Meghan Markle, right? And she was talking about exercise. And she was saying, like, I have a tremendous resistance to exercise, but I know I'll feel so much better when I do it. It's just the most obvious example, but it's actually a very deep point that what's very, very often what's truly good for us, what's really, really good for us is harder to do initially. And what's not good for us, just watching TV all day or gossiping or overeating or over drinking or over whatevering is usually very cathartic initially, is very enjoyable initially, and then afterwards we feel diminished. So choices are always complex. And actually the mystics have a word for it. They actually say that we live in an alma de speka. This is actually Aramaic. Alma in Aramaic is olam, and speka is in the Aramaic way of saying olam shel safek, is a world of doubt. We live in a world of doubt, meaning life is super complicated, and making good decisions is absolutely not easy. And very often when we have something that really is truly good to do, we have an enormous pull, a powerful pull inside of us to resist it. And the converse is also true. So the idea that our moral choices are absolutely complicated. And that's why we often feel like very frozen with how to move forward in our lives. We live in an alma de speka. It was not always that way. And we learn, and there's such beautiful Torah on this idea. And I hope that I'm giving it, like, I'm probably not doing it justice, but there is an idea that once upon a time, before Adam and Chava ate from the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. So the commandment was not to eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, it didn't say, don't eat from the tree, from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of evil, because if the tree were black like a Disney film, like a tree in the shape of a witch with big eyes and scary and bad, it would have been quite obvious not to even touch it. But the idea is that when Adam and Chava, before they ate from the fruit, there really was good and evil, but it wasn't in them. Things that were outside might have been evil, but the good and evil, the mixed upness wasn't yet inside of them. It was only when they partook of the fruit and literally ingested doubt, that they literally ingested the admixture of good and bad. And now all of a sudden, it wasn't so clear what was good. And it really wasn't so clear what was bad. And very often bad looked really pretty and good looked really ugly. And we resisted good and we were drawn to bad. And when we were drawn to bad, we would dress it up as good so that we would justify our desires. And we do that all the time. There's probably not a day that we don't say, somehow justify why what's really not good for us, we're still going to partake in. I don't think there's a person who doesn't do that on some level every day. We ingested an admixture. We ingested an olam dispeka, like a world of confusion about good and evil, which is why after they eat from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the first thing they do is absolutely absurd. They hide, as if you could hide from God. And the hiding represents the confusion, like that we all have, which is even though if we're really, really honest and we lived in a world of total clarity, we would definitely know, well, I know I can't hide from God. I know God's with me all the time because God has no chesronot. God has no lackings. God has nothing lacking in him. God is one. God is absolute. There's nothing besides him. Ein od milvado. The world is just a creation of his. Of course, I can't hide from him. If we're in a place of clarity, we know that. But what happens? We don't want it to be true. We want independence from God. We don't want God totally in our lives, and therefore we say, whatever, it's not really, it's not, and we push away truth. So we do this all the time. And the first person, or the first one who does this, is our Adam and Chava, where they immediately hide. So the idea that the minute they ingest confusion, literally the eating of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, is the ingesting, the internalizing of an alma despeka, of a world where good and evil are no longer clear. And very often what's not good for us is incredibly seductive, beautiful. We beautify it with our rationalizations. And what's good for us, we resist, and we don't acknowledge how important and powerful it is for us. We live in a world, there's also another concept called alma de shikrut, which means like a world of falsehood. So Adam and Chava hide. And then another most amazing thing, and I'm only just touching on this idea. This idea is so deep and it's so beautiful to learn. But the next thing that happens is God also says a totally bizarre thing. Adam and Chava are hiding, as if you could hide from God. And the Almighty says, Ayeka, where are you? Where are you? So Ayeka can be understood in many, many ways, but one of the ways we understand it is that God mirrors us, that God, David HaMelech, King David says in Tehillim, in the book of Psalms, that God is our shadow, meaning what we put out there, God responds to. So if we're going to respond to God in a way of obfuscation, of confusion, then God also says, where are you? As if he can't see us. He's almost returning the confusion back to us. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that this is a world like of an admixture of good and evil. It's even symbolized in our bodies. Even when we ingest food and we take the good, we take the vitamins and the minerals, and we literally, sorry, gross, but the body expels the rest. That's literally what it's interesting, because it says somewhere in the Talmud that God will ultimately expel evil from the world. He'll literally take the good that's in the world, like nutrients, minerals and nutrients, all the valuable, and he'll expel evil from the world in the times of Mashiach. But the idea is that as long as we're alive in this body, in this world, we're pretty confused. And if we don't think we're confused, it's probably because we're not really honestly confronting how powerful our free will choices really are. I'll say that again, because you might say, like, I don't know, like, I'm doing fine. I'm not really so confused. I mean, I don't know why this is so heavy. Like, I'm not like that confused. I think I'm living a good life. And I think we are living good lives. But I mean, this is a wonderful group of people, but nonetheless, we are constantly disowning the power of our free will choices. We're constantly belittling them, or not really surfacing what it means to be clear about a good choice, what it means to not indulge in a not good choice. The power of rationalizations don't make us bad. They're just a product of alma despeka. They're very much a product of how we're made, which is a product of the decision of decisions that took place in the beginning with the story of Adam and Chava. So we live in a world of doubt, and that's part of being human, but we don't want to stay there. In other words, we seek, as honest, truth-seeking people, we acknowledge that we're filled with contradictions. Very often, evil is coded in a veneer that looks good, and good is coded in a veneer that looks not good. And I think it's fair to say that if you don't understand that you're confused, you're probably in denial. That's not really that nice. Like, sometimes a psychologist, a psychiatrist, if somebody's acting healthy, if a patient's acting healthy, they'll say it's because the patient's in denial, which is really sad, because maybe they are doing well, but it's kind of a not a very positive thing to say. But the reason I'm saying it with confidence is because it's how it is. We live in this era. We live in an Olam Tisfeka. But as growth-oriented spiritual people, we seek to istalek atzmechem meisefecha. We seek to free ourselves from doubt. And that's what the Talmud says in Sanhedrin when it says, this is such a powerful verse. I never really totally understood it, but I was thinking about it today. There is no joy greater than the resolution of doubts. In other words, we are, the very nature of who we are post Adam and Chava eating from the tree is that we're confused, and we live in a world where good is bad and bad is good, and a lot of lack of clarity. And every generation thinks that they're right, and every generation thinks that their way of looking at the world is right. And everybody here, whether you're conservative or liberal or this or that, or wherever you're coming from, thinks your perspective is right, that this is right or that is right. Everybody in every generation, unfortunately, thinks that, for the most part, thinks that their outlook is right, but we don't really know. So the wise person knows that they don't necessarily know, but the wise person knows, it's not that the wise person doesn't have contradiction within them. They do, because they're human. But the wise person seeks to resolve contradiction and doubt as much as they're able to. And that's why Rabban Gamliel says a second time, a Sailfire, because because we are such confusing people, and we're confused, and because we live in an Alma Desfeka, we might not want. Now remember, this is Judaism. Judaism is all about Asela Harav. It's not very, very big in our secular society, but in Judaism, it's enormous. It's part of the very fabric of what we call the Masorah, which is the passing of the Torah from generation to generation, is absolutely dependent on a student having a Rav who was immersed in the wisdom of the previous generation. It's very anathema, it's antithetical, it's kind of just not a thing in our secular world today. But in Judaism, a Selech Harav is a tremendous, tremendous value. But because we are confused, and because sometimes bad looks good and good looks bad, and our lives are filled with contradiction, and we probably, every one of us has said at some point, oh my gosh, if anybody knew that I did, or that I felt, or that I was this or this or this, I would, whatever. The tendency to not want to Rav, even in the days of Pirkei Avot, right? The tendency to not want someone who's intimately involved with you as your guide is a very great one. Well, what if he knows this about me? Or what if she discovers this about me? And so just like Adam and Chava hide, literally, they're created, the world is created, everything is a creation of God. There's no hiding from God. It's not like playing hide and seek where I hide behind a table and you're looking for me. It doesn't work like that. This is God we're talking about. But just like they wanted to hide from God, why? Because when they ate from the tree and they ingested confusion, the very first primal desire was independence from God, was the illusion of non-dependence on God, or really the illusion of the non-existence of God. So they hid, as if to say, sorry, I'm not interested. I don't want it. And that's also in us. In the Olam Desfeka, we also want independence from God, but we also want independence from someone we look up to, knowing us very, very intimately and knowing our decisions very intimately. But in Judaism, and again, is a little bit interesting in our world to hear, because it's just not really a thing in the secular world. But in Judaism, it's part and parcel of the fabric of the generations, that everyone should have someone in their life who was connected to the generation before it. So the idea of a rabbi who knows you, who knows your dark side, who knows your confusion, who understands who you are, not necessarily 100%, but who you don't feel you have to have the illusion of separation from, but who you can be honest with, who has the knowledge of Torah, who has the breadth of Torah, who can guide you in a way that's healthy and appropriate for you. Rabban Gamliel says, this is what you need to free yourself from doubt. It's one sentence. See, you see, like, I don't know what it is in Hebrew, but you see in English, you have provide yourself with a teacher, comma, and free yourself from doubt, semicolon. And don't make it a practice to give tithes by guessing. So in other words, provide yourself with a teacher and free yourself from doubt are part of the same sentence. So provide yourself with someone who knows you, someone who knows your family, someone who understands your struggles, someone who you don't have to hide from, and allow someone who has the breadth and knowledge of Torah, who cannot just slap on a generic, you can't do that, but I know your family, I know you, I know your struggles, and this seems like the next best move for you. One of the reasons we resist having a rabbi, and I think this was also true in Pirkei in the times of the Mishna, which is, you're just going to tell me X, Y, or Z. You're just going to tell me I have to keep Shabbos and you're just going to tell me X, Y, Z. And we assume almost like a generic relationship from them. But that's not the nature of the Judaic, like, student-teacher relationship. Student-teacher relationship is, I know you. You don't have to hide yourself from me. And I'm going to help guide you with the breadth of my knowledge and wisdom in a way that's healthy for you. So Rabban Gamliel says this removes you or frees you from doubt, and that is joyful. It is very joyful in this confusing world where we don't always know what the right answer is. Look, the rabbis also, especially today, they're not prophets. I mean, it's not that a rabbi has the right answer. You're confused. You don't know if you should do A, B, or C. The rabbi does know, and they'll tell you, and then you'll know that B was the right answer. No, it's not that simple. We live in Alma Desfeka, but what we're supposed to do is have this relationship. And therefore, when we're guided by someone within the context of this relationship, even if we go with B and find trouble along the way, the just knowing that someone we trust who has the breadth and knowledge of Torah has guided us is part of the answer. So again, it's different than what we're used to. We live in a highly individualistic society that, whether we realize it or not, very much values autonomy and individuality, and is almost suspicious, especially now in our culture. They're gonna tell you what to do, but I can tell you, we've discussed this in the past. In my experience, I'm going to rabbis and rebbitzins, I'm never told what to do. It's never do this. But I will tell you that the experience of talking to someone resolves a certain degree of doubt. And this is what the Talmud is calling joy, is this resolution of doubt. So doubt, there's a lot to say about doubt, but doubt has been with us since the beginning of time. When Adam and Chava, until they ate from the fruit of the tree, bad was outside of them. It was something like removed from them, but they literally, so to speak, ingested confusion. And it's a confusion that we still live with today. So I think it's very important not to feel shame about, if I know, like we all have had this before, which is like, I know what the right answer is. I know I need to stop gambling, drinking, this, that, whatever it is. I know I need to stop X, what X, Y, or Z. But I'm not, it's like my body's acting one way, my mind is telling me another. Although we, obviously don't want it to be like, if it's full-fledged addiction, it's very scary. But the point is, to a certain degree, alma desfeka is in everybody, where bad is good and good is bad, and we don't really need to be ashamed of that. It's part of the human condition. The question is, what will we do to resolve it? Now I want to move on to the second part, and then I want to open it up to the group. So that's the first part of our Mishnah. Rabban Gamliel said, provide for yourself with a teacher and free yourself from doubt. And then it says something that looks a little like it couldn't possibly be relevant for our day, but I think you're going to see that it is actually quite relevant. So like everything in Judaism. So it says here, and do not make it a practice to give tithes by guessing. Okay, let's just discuss what tithes are for a minute. So there's two things in Judaism. There's trumot and maasrot. Maasrot are 1/10 of your income, 1/10 of your produce, 1/10 of your agriculture. We gave truma to the high priest in the times of the temple. And truma, I think, was not necessarily an exact amount, but tithes are an exact amount. So this is just the halachic Judaic way of understanding what he's saying. The tithes are literally 1/10 of the produce of your field. So what is this saying? It's saying when the halacha says you give this much to the Levi, to the poor in your city, or whatever it is, then you give that much from a Jewish perspective. You don't think to like make, it's not about guesswork. So a person who is very conscientious will make sure they're not giving too little, because then they won't be fulfilling the mitzvah. But this is the kind of halachic way of understanding this. But they might say, well, because I don't know exactly how much it is, I'm just going to give a little bit more. Like, I could see definitely doing that, right? Like, I can't remember exactly how much it's supposed to be. So, but I don't want to underdo it, because then I'm not doing the mitzvah of shumras, of meisering my produce, of giving tithes. So I'm just going to give a little bit more. But now, this is just kind of like a little bit of a halachic understanding. But the problem with giving a little bit more from a legal Judaic perspective is that the 10th has been sanctified. More than that, the extra part has not been sanctified. And so you're actually causing the Levi who's going to partake in the produce that you're tithing to potentially transgress, because they're eating food that is not part of the meiser. So in other words, sometimes, I mean, that's a very halachic concept, but sometimes too much, like giving up too much, and this is what we're going to talk about in our life, can be as bad as too little. So what does that mean for us? It's connected, I think, to the beginning of our Mishnah, in that this, again, we don't really experience so much in the secular world, but in the religious world, you might say, I don't want a rabbi in my life. I want independence. I don't want that sense of authority in my life. I'll just be a little more stringent, so I make sure I do the mitzvah right. So, okay, what's wrong with that? Now, Julie, if you just go down, I read this from David Rosenfeld from Torah.org, and I thought it was such a beautiful thing. So the question really is, what's wrong with just being like too stringent? Okay, now most of us aren't too stringent. Most of us could probably, be pretty good to be a little more stringent, but I don't want a rabbi. I'll just do a little bit more. So what's wrong with that? So this is, even though probably most of us don't go too far, we might not get too stringent, the concept is very, very powerful. And I'll summarize it, and then we'll read Rabbi Rosenfeld's piece. In a nutshell, don't be more stringent than you need to. There's a verse in the Talmud in Masechtas Nedarim, which says, the Torah has not forbidden enough on you that you want to add to it. What does that mean? So this is something that's so important to understand about Judaism, which is that Judaism, God, not Judaism, God wants us to take pleasure in the world. We are supposed to take pleasure in every aspect of the physical world. Everything that exists in the physical world is there for us to take pleasure in. We're not meant to be ascetic, monk-like, withdrawn, removed from the world. We're meant to enjoy everything the world has to offer. But if we don't use the physical world to get closer to God. Actually, with Stephen, you were talking about this in that wonderful email, which I still haven't responded to. I was trying to figure out how to call you. I'm so bad. I was trying to put your number in WhatsApp because I know I'll get back to you much sooner, but he had a very interesting experience. He can share it or not, but he remembered that tefillin is bonds you to God. So how do we bond closer? How do we get closer to God? Through the physical world. We're literally through enjoying, not just through thanking God for everything, but through actually enjoying it, through enjoying what God gave us. But it's only when we do it in an elevated way. It's like a filter. It's almost like getting back to the admixture of good and evil, just like the human body keeps the nutrients and keeps the vitamins and keeps the healthy and expels the rest. So too in our physical world, we're meant to take the good and not indulge almost like in an animal-like way or in a thoughtless robotic or in a taking or in a hedonistic way. We're not meant to kind of like have our animal urges lead the way. You know, the image that they always use is the horse and the rider. It's the classic image. The classic image is that the animal, the horse, is the body, and the rider is the soul. So in an ideal world, your soul is the rider and they've got control of the horse, but the horse is still taking the rider where the rider needs to go. The horse is incredibly important. So the body, when the body is controlled, I don't really like that word, when the soul is leading the show and the body is enjoying itself in this physical world, but in a way that's elevated through the soul, then we're going where we need to be going. But if the horse is in charge and the rider's like falling off the bandwagon and the rider's like, and the horse is leading the show, then it's not going to take us where we want to go at all. The horse is going to lead to problematic pastures. So when it says, and don't be unnecessarily stringent on yourself. In essence, it's in essence God saying to us, I made this world for you. Visit it, eat it, partake in it, enjoy it, take pleasure in it, enjoy all the tastes of it, but don't let it own you. Don't let it own you. So I don't need you to be unnecessarily stringent, because unnecessary stringency means there's something in the physical world that I'm allowing you to partake in and enjoy, and out of a sense of holiness or something, you're refusing it. No, it's here for you. So this is really the Jewish view on pleasure. I'm gonna read it from Rabbi Rosenfeld because I think he said it really beautifully. Without rabbinic guidance, one may find he at times has to be stringent with himself. Okay, like you see this definitely sometimes in the religious world. Like, I don't feel like asking, I'll just be super careful about it. A basically observant individual, when confronted with cases of doubt, will have to forego some possibly permitted pleasure here and there. And this is simply not the point of Judaism at all. God doesn't want us denying ourselves what is actually permitted. It's unnecessary but more importantly, it will probably backfire. The Talmud puts it pithily and all too well. The Torah has not forbidden enough on you already that you want to add to it? Forbidding upon ourselves as much as we can, though often mistaken to be the point of Judaism, right? I mean, I think I think for a lot of you, your parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, Judaism, and even some of our kind of, like when we watch Netflix and we watch Unorthodox and all those crazy Netflix things about orthodoxy, it looks like there's like value, holiness in withdrawal and asceticism, in refusing the physical world. But that has nothing to do with what Judaism is all about. God has no interest in our making ourselves martyrs or ascetics. We must never feel religion forces us to decide between this world and the next, which is, I think, I can't speak authoritatively about other religions, but I think there's definitely a concept of deny yourself in this world so you can partake in the next. Deny yourself, he says this, deny yourself the pleasures of this world if you want to share in the world to come. Judaism believes in discipline, that everything has its proper time and place, and that we don't allow the animal within us to run loose. But the one-word description of Judaism, and I think this is super beautiful, is shalom, is shlemut, it's harmony. Shalom does not mean, people say shalom, manishma, which means hi, hello, how are you? But it's not really what it means. Shalom is from the word shlemu, which means harmony, or the wholeness of different parts. The one-word description of Judaism is shalom, not suppression. Harmony, not suppression. You could even write that on a little note and you could stick it by your bed or on your refrigerator. Harmony, not suppression. We don't see spirituality as the quelling of our natural desires. It's the sublimation of all of our drives toward the spiritual. What does that mean? Everything God created is purposeful. Otherwise, God wouldn't have created it. This is axiomatic to what Judaism and the belief in a perfect God are all about. Our mission is to take all our God-given talents and our drives and our tendencies and to use them, not ignore or misuse them in the manner that God wants. So I think that if we're at the end. This is what we call the harmony of opposites, body and soul. So if we go to the top, if we go to the very beginning, where it says, don't be afraid to let God in, to let a rabbi in too. It doesn't say the first part. It is incredibly, because by nature we have a lot of inner confusion. It's incredibly important to have that relationship. It helps you avoid doubt, because by our very nature, we're filled with doubt. We live in a world of doubt, but because we live in a world of contradiction, we're often ashamed of ourselves. And so we want independence or separation, not only from God, but from some sort of authority figure in our life, or some sort of, not even authority, but guide. Don't be afraid to have that relationship. And if you refuse that relationship out of a spirit of religiosity, you might say, I'll just be more strict. But God doesn't want you to be more strict, because God wants you to enjoy the world that he gave you, but in a disciplined way, in an elevated way, so that your higher part of you is running your show, not your lower part of you. And when we live like that, we are living in shalom. We're living in shlemut. We're living in the harmony of our opposing drives. And that sort of picture of living in pursuit of that kind of harmony with that relationship with someone outside of us, who, by the way, is free from our Yetzer Hara, which is why earlier in the Mishna it says, why is it so important to have a friend? Well, some reasons are obvious, but one of the reasons is they might not be wiser than you. They might not be wiser than you, but guess what they don't have? Your Yetzer Hara, right? They don't have your Yetzer Hara. So things that you are by nature very confused about, they might have more clarity about. It doesn't mean they're wiser than you. It just means they're removed from your speikut, from your doubt and confusion. So this is almost like, I think it's fair to say, like, this is the good life. This is like powerful wisdom on what it means to live a good life and a joyful life. Because as the Talmud says, and you can think about the meaning of this phrase, I think you could sit with it and think about it, that there's no joy greater than the resolution of doubts. So you can give that phrase from the Talmud some thought. So I want to open it up with our last 10 minutes and hear from people.
Ellie, it's Hannah. Hi. I have hi. This is really one of my favorite Mishnayot, or whatever you call them, about take yourself a rabbi, or whatever it means. But are they just talking about a rabbi, or are they also talking about a mentor? Because I always thought that maybe you should have a mentor. Because I don't know if obviously I respect your husband, the rabbi, and all that, and I respect my other rabbis. But I think sometimes to me, a mentor, which can be a friend or whatever, don't mean more to me, but I feel more comfortable in the relationship. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think it's a really good point, and I think it's very important to have a mentor. In fact, in Lubavitch, anyone who's familiar with Chabad, they'll know the concept of mashpia, that you're supposed to have, Hana used the word mentor. So a mashpia is a mentor. They're not necessarily some big rav, but they have wisdom, and you can and they know you. Your mashpia knows you. So yeah, Hannah, I get that, and I think it's a very Jewish idea what you're saying.
Because
but they know you. They know you.
Right now I'm working on a project with Stand With Us in Arizona, and I'm talking to a couple of friends that I have an awful lot of respect, that have been there with me. So, but I don't know if I would feel comfortable to talk about this with a rabbi. And also, by the way, since we talked about that, I talked to Asaf, he's the new executive director in the Midwest, and I've talked to Julie, and we are going to do a program with Stand With Us, probably in June or July.
So important. That's great for you. A mentor is a huge thing, and it's a very important thing. And sometimes you're willing to make yourself known more, or they have more time, or it's a little bit closer. So yes, that's also very powerful.
Thank you.
Allie, sorry, I'm in my car and I have to get out.
Stace, drive carefully.
Hello. Yes, but I was thinking this whole time about the friends we choose and how, we look at our friends who, it's interesting, do we choose our friends because we want to hear from them what suits us best? Are we smart enough to get away from friends who make things toxic for us? It's just very interesting how we choose friends. I have found as I've gotten older, I get away from people who can make too much tumult in my life. And I think I've matured to find friends whose advice I like hearing, the good and bad. I think I've chosen friends, many of my friends who are good sounding boards for me. It's just everything you've said today. I just find it so interesting, just about the friends we choose to have and why. Yeah. Why do we choose them? So it's just a lot of thought you've given
it's
me.
Funny, Stacey, because in Israel, like now that we've moved, like every relationship is a choice. I mean, a relationship is only as strong as the one who wants it the least. So you can't control how close a relationship is, especially if you're the one who's pursuing it. But David and I talk about this all the time, which is how when everyone's new, I mean, it's like that when you move to DC. I mean, everybody's new.
Yeah.
So you're not you're not schlepping anything from your past. The question is like, why are you drawn to people? What do you want in a relationship? What's drawing you to this person? I think about this all the time because we're in this funny situation where we're actually like, we're tabula rasa, you know, we're a blank slate, just sort of like making these choices. So what do we want? Like, what are we really after in a friendship? It's such an important question.
It is.
Hi, Susie. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
There's a concept that in the Torah, and we did it not that long ago, of Amalek. And this source, Amalek is the source of evil in this world. Or he represents the source of evil in this world. And I've learned before that where there is doubt, it creates an opening and it allows Amalek to enter.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And so maybe you could put that together with the doubt that we have here.
Well, first of all, it's the same gematria. Safek and Amalek are the
Right.
same numerical value. And the Talmud says that Amalek, who's like the quintessential enemy of the Jewish people, that it's like that in biblical times, everyone had such awe of the Jewish people, nobody would do battle with them. They were so clearly God's chosen people. And then Amalek did battle with them and cooled the pot. It was like a pot of boiling water, and Amalek was like the frog that jumped in and cooled it for the rest of the anti-Semites so that they could do battle with the Jewish people. So it represents, like you said, that who is this archetypal enemy is this cooling of our clarity. It's like when our clarity, when our understanding of what's truly right and good gets cooled and muted, and we let kind of confusion and doubt bubble up. So so the idea of gematria, that words that have the same numerical value have some sort of intrinsic connection, that this quintessential enemy, that the numerical value is the same as the numerical value of the word for doubt. And even that is, we learn in the Torah, after they eat from the tree of the fruit of good and evil, God says, Hamin ha'etz, from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil did you eat? And the word Hamin ha'etz, that word Hamin is the same word as Haman. Haman, who was the enemy of enemies in the Purim story, which is coming up pretty soon. He wanted to annihilate the Jewish people. Haman was the great whatever grandson of Amalek. So even at that point, God is alluding to this, that our greatest enemy is doubt.
But isn't there also something that that the doubt is the doubt in Hashem and in Hashem's Torah. And if we doubt the ultimate reality, then we let evil in.
I guess, I mean, now look, this is not to say that everyone should struggle to understand, and nobody should feel shame for not having clarity. But so probably Susie, but I do want to make clear to the whole group that we live in a real olam desfeka, a world filled with non-clarity. So nobody should be hard on themselves if they don't have 5-finger clarity. But again, it's what we do to get closer to understanding clarity. That's what's important. Not that we abolish all doubt from ourselves, because we're not going to do that. So yes, Susie, I think you're right, but I think it does need to be contextualized a little bit so people understand, you know.
Well, we know we're
that-
not going to do it because Adam and Eve, they were created, you know, the most perfect original people, and they immediately fell into it.
Yeah.
So if
it's
they
that
did,
easy.
why wouldn't we?
Right. Anyone else? Hi, Linda.
Hi,
you are.
everybody. Great class as always. Thank you so much. I think the biggest challenge is finding the teacher. The right teacher
Oh,
that one can trust.
Yeah.
And
Talk about that a
ability
little
to
bit.
assess.
Yeah.
The ability to assess, does the person have the wisdom, the space to guide?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, I put it out there to the group, to Linda's point, even the pursuit of that relationship can be a very doubt-filled experience, right? Right, Linda, that knowing whom to trust, knowing in whom you can put your trust, that creates a lot of doubt. Is that fair to say, Linda?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that I'm just thinking about this right now, just going through the action of finding someone and making that leap of faith, of trusting, is probably a huge growth in of itself.
Ellie, can I say something about that?
Sure.
I have found over the years, like I just said, I'm working on this Stand With Us event, that when I say I find, or whatever you call it in Hebrew, I find people that feel that I know will not judge me. I think that's a really important thing. And people that I can really talk very honestly with. So, so let me think. Like, I'm divorced. So when I have issues with my past, I find a friend that has gone through the same thing and is not going to judge me. And I have, like, I would say 4 or 5 friends that I feel that way towards. I call them my board of directors. And I
like that.
I do.
That's
and
great.
I don't, no, but I don't, like, if I'll tell, but like even Doris. Doris is a good friend of mine. She's coming next week to Arizona. So like when I have issues with my background, with being a child of survivors, she's a fabulous, she's a fabulous person to vent or whatever you want. Or she's a fabulous mentor because she doesn't judge me and she listens to me and we can spend hours talking and she's on my wavelength. But when I have issues with my past as far as being single and divorced, she won't understand. It wouldn't be fair for me to talk to her about it. So I'm just saying that I would say 4 or 5 very close friends that are my, whatever you want to call, my board of directors.
I absolutely love that term. The idea of establishing a board of directors for yourself, not to tell you what to do, but that people play different roles in your life. That's really powerful.
That's good.
I think Hannah touched on something really important in that maybe it's not just one teacher, but
Right.
in different areas of your life, you have different requirements and different needs. And so by having a variety of people who, you picked out to advise you, I think is probably really wise.
And
I also, to Hannah's point, also, it also reiterates something that you never hear discussed in our larger society, which is how profoundly subjective and to a certain degree, like somewhat confused about ourselves we are, because we're in it. So, we like to think of ourselves as absolutely independent and capable of making our best decisions. And sometimes we might even be like suspicious that somebody else, they don't know me. What are they? I'm not going to rely on them. I know better. I mean, these are very, very normal feelings, but the idea, whether they're wiser or maybe even on your level, whatever that means, the idea that they're not mired in your subjectivity, that the confusion that you might be experiencing, they might have their own, they do have their own confusion, but it's not yours. So let's just use Hannah for an example. If Hannah's really struggling with something around a specific issue and she goes to one of her board of directors who she feels understands it the most, it might be just a peer of Hannah's, but the idea that they're not in that struggle. And so they have a measure of wisdom, if you want to call objectivity or maybe wisdom. Right Passages, Renee, I love that book. I have it on my bookshelf. I love that. I was a little dated, but it's Gail Sheehy, right? I love that book. Is that Gail Sheehy? The idea that it really does take someone who's, and so that it wouldn't necessarily even be your spouse or your sibling, because they might be or your child even, they might be too connected to it, but someone who's really outside of the internal confusion that you're in, even though they have their own internal confusion. So I just think that, I think there's just a humility in Judaism of acknowledging that we don't have all the answers, and the wise person is the one who knows that we don't have all the answers. And it's the wise person is not the one who has all the answers. And I just think that's powerful. Yeah.
I also have to say that, I'm sorry, I also have to say that, don't get me wrong, when I have religious or whatever observant,
Yeah.
I right away go to a rabbi. I mean, I know.
You've got a rabbi and a board of directors. Hannah, you're one of the people that, really, I give you, Hannah, you are an example of somebody who really seeks out, you almost like you create the life that, my perspective of you, whether it's on the mark or not, is that you're not passive. You create the life that you want to have, like proactively. I really see that in you, and it's a beautiful quality. It really, really is. Okay, Dana, hi.
My dad would never let a class go by without speaking, so I'll have to say one thing. Just belonging to a group like this, a community, a learning group, a community of like-minded people is just such an organic, it's just an easy way to organically fall into that, I believe, because you're with like-minded people. And, like we say, we can learn something from absolutely everybody. And when you're in a community like this, it's just a really, I found it to be, an easy way to happen organically. So thank you.
Yeah, you're so right. And Linda, I think that's to your question, to your point. I think what Dana said is sometimes, that stupid joke, but it's actually really deep. And I'm going to say it wrong. I think it's a Yiddish joke. I'm going to butcher it. But, right. There's a guy who's looking and looking and looking for his keys. And he's looking under the lamp. Look, I think it's Yiddish joke. He's looking under the street light lamp. It's very dark and there's a street light, and he's looking and looking for his keys. And he can't find them anywhere. And somebody comes up to him and says, "Why are you only looking for your keys under the light? And you can't find them, they could be anywhere." And the man says, "Well, the light is only shining over here." Right? I totally butchered that joke. I have to look for it. But the idea is sometimes like it's right near us, but we're not looking for it. I think that, Dana, your point is true. Like everyone in this group is so truth seeking and so open to being in those sort of relationships. So, it could be that your keys are right outside where you're looking for them. I butchered that. I gotta find it.
We got the message though.
Yeah.
Dana, you have a message from Renee. Are you related to Richard and Sandy Spiewak? You're muted.
Yeah, those are my in-laws. How do you know them, Renee?
Renee, come out from behind, come out from where the light is shining.
Hello, can you
Under
hear
the
me now?
street lamp.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Sandy and Richard, we bought homes at the same time in the Willows in Glenview, and they were right across the street. And the two girls, Stacy and I can't remember the other name.
Lori.
Lori and Stacy grew up with my kids. They all went to school at the same time.
So
And-
nice. What's your
And
last name?
Richie, and there were like 5 other people on our cul-de-sac. They were all good friends, and they were all part of the mercantile eventually, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, what's your last
Okay,
name?
this is so Jewish. This is so
Yeah.
Jewish. Like at the end of
Well, at
class,
the time I
this
was
is-
married, at the time I was in a different marriage. So my name then was Renee Block, David and Renee Block, and then Meryl, Jason and Jordan are my kids. And they
Okay.
know,
I
they
love
know Stacy and Lori quite well.
Oh, it's so nice. Thank you for saying something.
Yeah, well,
I
I,
love it.
Mhm.
like Yali
It
said,
wouldn't be a Jewish class without an ending like that.
well, anyway, when you speak to your
They're my
Machatunim,
in-laws.
when you speak to your Machatunim, please say hello from Renee across the street.
I'll tell them right now.
They're my machatanim. All right, everybody. This was a great discussion. Yeah, keep going. Rhonda, lovely Rhonda Wenner.
Just wanted to, I keep thinking about what you said about being the blank slate because you're in a new environment. And I had that twice. I had it when I moved to Chicago the first time for my job. I knew no one. And the second time I moved to Chicago was with Jeff. And I was very lucky because he had a whole group of wonderful friends that literally adopted me. So much so that people think I went to college with them because they all went
Yeah,
to
I
college.
know them. They're pretty okay.
They're pretty wonderful, but I just remember the feeling of having to be very careful because people didn't know me and they didn't know my intentions. And like you're walking on eggshells sometimes because you want people to think the best of you always, but it just takes time. It
Yeah.
just take time for people to know you and to get to know who you are, and
Yeah.
you will have no problem because you're such a wonderful person and your family's so
Thank you.
wonderful. It will come, but it's a little.
You sound like my mom. They don't know how lucky they are.
Your mother is right.
In one way, you're very fortunate. My
Gosh
son
darn it.
keeps cutting. Oh, who's
How
that?
is your mother?
She's pretty
How is
good.
your mom?
Can I make one comment? My son
Yes.
keeps cutting in and out, and I don't know if it's my Wi-Fi or if it's you, but I've missed a little bit of this. But in one sense, you can be very fortunate when you start a new life like that as a blank slate. Maybe this is not a good trait of mine, but sometimes I wish I could have a blank slate
Yeah.
and get rid of some of, my toxicity around me that will always be there.
Yeah.
I try to see the good, like you tell me to. I try hard.
I do too.
but
I
it
also
is-
try.
Yeah, but it is what it is. And I think sometimes I fantasize about having a complete blank slate.
Yeah,
It's like,
interesting. That's very interesting. It really is a blank slate. That's an interesting take on a blank slate, Renee. You guys are wonderful. I'm not a blank slate. I'm coming with all this love.
Oh, but
Okay,
you've
thank
been
Israel.
since-
Thank Israel. Yes, Stephen. Okay, you're the last one because then I have to do my Hebrew homework. Or you guys can stay on,
just-
but I have to.
You've been there since July, so the blank slate is not fully blank. It's beginning to fill up, isn't it?
Well, what did you say, Stephen?
I thought you've been there since July, right?
Oh,
So the blank slate is not fully blank. It's
no, but
beginning to
not
fill
fully
up.
blank. Not fully blank. And I have the Margolises, and they go way back. So that's not fully blank. It's true. It's true. All right, everybody. Stay warm and healthy. And you guys are the best. And thank you for making this such a wonderful hour. I look forward to
Thank you,
it so much.
Ally. And if you get bored